I don't think you can play around this. You have your 2 Targons, right?
Yeah.
But this point,
Sure.
I have Time Warp.
Oh wow, you rat. Yeah. Why are you main decking that? You crazy man. What?
They don't know.
What are you main decking?
They don't know. What's going on, chat? So today we're going to be going over the deck that we brought to Rift Lab Clash number 3. This is Time Warp Kaisa. This deck was made mostly for the mirror match and with a lot of options for Aurora as well, because that's probably the worst matchup. Our key cards here are going to be Time Warp. That's like what we built the deck around. So this deck is very interesting because the Kaisa Legend, for one, just preserves a lot of runes, and she can use a lot of... She has a lot of ways to keep the board stable with her removal and her Legend ability, so that she can get to 10 runes and actually use Time Warp. And there's just a lot of hasty ways in the deck to get Time Warp, or to win the game after Time Warp is used. So, you know, you can go from 5 points to 6 points, Time Warp, hold with 7, and use a Darius or a Thousand Tail Watcher or even a Sprite Mother just to conquer, the final winning point. Or even you could just be at 6 points, conquer 1, so that'll put you at 7, and then you Time Warp, and then you hold, and that's the game. That's why it's pretty good. It applies a lot of pressure to your opponent to, if you can't remove this, you're gonna lose. So it's also good against Aurora decks, because a lot of the times the Aurora decks can keep you from conquering one or both battlefields by just stopping you from conquering one of them, right? So for example, a lot of the times you're just going to lose when your opponent has 2 Mind Splitters on one board and you are not able to hold the other one because they just put a big thing on it and beat you with ganking. So yeah, you can use either Time Warp or also unchecked power in that situation, but we'll go over that later. So if you run into an Aurora deck, what you can do at 6 points is just go ahead and conquer one battlefield that they're not on, or they might even be on it, right? But what matters is that you can end up at a place where you can just conquer one and press Time Warp and you win the game. That is one way that we can win in game 1 against them. And we sometimes don't have a lot of ways to win game 1 against them. The biggest problem with that matchup is that they can also Mind Splitter the Time Warp out of your hand, but how many things can go wrong there? There are a lot of things can go wrong in that matchup. Anyway, so I'm gonna go start by describing the battlefields here. So these are our choice of battlefields: Targon's Peak, Void Gate, Reaver's Row. So generally in game 1, you're gonna just choose Reaver's Row because it synergizes very well with Kaisa here. And game 1, you have your retreats, so you can save Kaisa, and that's why we're only playing one Kaisa here. We can play a lot of extra other cards instead of playing Kaisa. So we have retreat, so we just save Kaisa for a point where we can either retreat it, or we just put it on the row and it kind of saves itself, or both, because sometimes you'll put the Kaisa on the Reaver's Row and they use, for example, they could use Void Seeker on it and you just retreat it and you still have Kaisa. So you don't... I am currently not playing more than one Kaisa, but that might change in the future. So game 1, Reaver's Row, generally, I have been okay with a Void Gate on game 1 in the mirror match, specifically because you don't know if you're going first, and the opponent always has to worry about moving their Kaisa into the Void Gate with a Hextech Ray. So that's why I like that. And a lot of Kaisas will even sideboard into additional copies of Retreat, which means that your removal is a little worse. So Void Gate gets a little extra value in that regard. But generally, game one, Reaver's Row in most matchups, it's fine. But what you do want if you drop a game, or if and when you drop a game, you're gonna go ahead and choose Targon's Peak going first, because a lot of really strong play patterns open up to you by going first and conquering this Targon. So yeah, the reason why we don't do this game one is because you don't know whether you're going first, and this is just especially strong if you're going first. So you can, a lot of games you just end up playing a 2-drop, like any 2-drop is fine, and then you're gonna go to your second turn, you're gonna conquer the Targon's Peak, and you'll get a point presumably. And when you conquer here, you'll ready 2 runes at the end of the turn, so that way you still have 4 runes, right? So you could just play Kaisa in the base, ready 2 runes at the end, and you still have your Hextech Ray and your Retreat and your Smokescreen. So you're in a pretty decent place. And Stupefy. So Stupefy obviously is really good with this Ravenbloom student. Your opponent will think twice. They should think twice about trying to contest you on this Targon's Peak, and that tempo could just mean the difference, mean all the difference, right? You could just run away with the game on the spot because you're able to conquer and hold up, develop Kaisa, and hold up Hextech Ray, and hold up Retreat, and hold up Stupefy, and hold up Smokescreen. That's just a really huge situation that you find yourself in. You can even drop a Noxus Hopeful, and your opponent will move to the other battlefield to try and avoid having to fight against, your Ravenbloom student and Stupefy, and just to have their unit got by a Hextech Ray. So that is an interesting situation that comes up a lot. You can even just play another 2-drop, or you can play Electring Yordle, and you'll untap 2 runes, and you will have 3 runes up, and you'll have access to Void Seeker. There's just a lot of too many. It opens up the game way too much in your favor to not play not want this going first specifically, and that'll just leave whatever battlefield you didn't choose going for your going second when you win a game there. So that is the battlefields. We will go into the main deck options. So like we were saying, 1 Kaisa is fine. You just need to play it a little slower so that you don't just put a Kaisa on the board and it gets removed. Play conservatively there. I'm putting in 1 Pouty Poro here just to have another 2-drop that's good against removal decks. So i.e. in the mirror match, right? Pouty Poro is especially good in the mirror match because of the deflect. I might go to 2 here, maybe just 1 retreat, 2 retreat, 2 Poro, but we'll look into that further at another time. The rest of the build is fairly standard. So I'm playing 3 retreat in the main specifically because we're playing Time Warp. We want to have a little more access to runes, and there are neat little combos like being able to retreat Darius and Sprite Mother and Watcher, but they don't always come up. You don't need this card in every matchup, but this card helps a lot in terms of preserving resources, so and ramping you. So that's why I really like this card. So we'll go over the rest of the list. Everything looks pretty standard, double Falling Star or triple Falling Star, triple Ray, triple Seeker. The Darius being at 3 might be one of the less standard things. So some Kaisas will play 2, some Kaisas will play 3. That really depends on a lot of things. And here we are playing 2 copies of Time Warp. We maybe can play 1 inside, 1 in main, or have Encathian Rain in main and then inside, and swap this. So these are options that are available. This is our sideboard here. We are playing 1 Cleave, 1 Smoke, 2 Ballista, 1 Sprite Mother, 2 Uncheck Power, 2 Encathian Rain, So unchecked power is especially good against baited a hook, which I found out in the finals. I did not sideboard properly. I had a shot at winning that and just needed to sideboard this in and didn't do it. Got punished. So ballistas are also decent against beta hook and sometimes Master Yi. And Sprite Mother is very good in the mirror match because it's an accelerator. It forces your opponent to maybe use removal depending on what the points are. And you do want this because you're trying to get to a position where you can just time warp and win. And hasty points are good. They're good against the mirror match and against the Aurora matchup here. And so, Smokescreen is just a good card to have a third copy of, especially against Orange, where they try to fight you on everything. And Cleave is Cleave. This card is nuts, especially if you're the attacker. And you're generally the attacker going second because you're trying to run into a board. And this can be good against removal also because you can play Cleave in your base and while a unit is in your base, and then when it attacks in, it'll just be large. So for example, if the opponent has a unit on the board, sometimes you will wait for an opponent to score a point just to do this play, but you're gonna go ahead and maybe, let's say for example, play a Sprite Mother, and then you have a Sprite Mother in your base and you Cleave. So if it attacks into a Watchful Sentry, for example, you will give it 3 might, so it'll be attacking in for 6 might. They can't just Hextech Ray it. So you need to be careful with certain interactions, and Cleave is really good into playing around removal and securing the points here. And that is the deck. Let me know in the comments if you guys have any ideas for the deck, if you think any of the ratios are wrong or any cards should be included in here. I mean, we're gonna have the deck list. We're gonna have the exact deck list for this here in the comments, and we're gonna have the updated deck list that I'm gonna be updating over time in the description. And with that, here's the gameplay. What's going on, chat? So today we are having a mirror match here against Kaisa versus Kaisa. Game 1 battlefield will be Reaver's Row, somewhat a neutral battlefield that's beneficial for both of us, but probably gives a slight edge to the player going first, but not quite an insurmountable one, I think. So we're just going to go with that one. And we'll decide who goes first in a moment here after we reveal battlefields. So I reveal Reaver's Row, opponent reveals Targon's, and we determine that I am going first. So I have a pretty good advantage here since the opponent has chosen Targon's and I'm going first. Now we're going to mulligan for 2 drops here, and we're going to send back a Smokescreen and a Darius. Since we play 3 Darius, we can always ship them back and not really think about it. We do get a little unlucky here and no 2-drop in our opening 4. So we're going to begin here and never didn't have it. We drop a 2-drop on turn 1 and pass the turn. And opponent's first turn will consist of a Raven Bloom student. And they pass it back. So our first turn, we're going to play Watchful Sentry to the Targons and check for a Hextech Ray. No Hextech Ray, we're going to go ahead and get the point here. So what I'm going to do here is play the Noxus Hopeful to base, pass the turn, and untap 2 runes. We're not playing Kaisa here because it plays around Falling Star a little bit. I'd rather accelerate it out and the opponent have less opportunities to stop us from doing that. So opponent will have the Raven Bloom student here. So opponent plays Shakedown, targeting our Noxus Hopeful here. And we're going to allow them to draw 2 cards. So opponent draws 2 cards from Shakedown. So that's pretty good for us because that means they're not developing a board, but their Raven Bloom student will go to 3 might here. So opponent sends their Raven Bloom student to the Reaver's row here. And we're gonna play Hextech Ray. So opponent plays Stupefy, targeting our Noxus Hopeful. And it looks like their hope is to give it an additional might here. So in response to their Stupefy, before their Raven Bloom student gets the might, we're going to go ahead and Stupefy the student so that it will not be able to live through the Hextech Ray here. And we've drawn another Stupefy, which is interesting. We're drawing a lot of duplicates. So the opponent passes the turn. We draw a Time Warp here. We're going to get 1 point for holding here. It seems fairly straightforward. The opponent does not have 3 runes up for Void Seeker, so we're probably just going to go ahead and move the Noxus Hopeful to the Reaver's row. We could also accelerate Kaisa into the Reaver's row. So here, because the opponent doesn't have 3 runes up, we're going to actually send the Kaisa accelerated to the Reaver's row and presumably score a point here. Yep, so we score a point and Kaisa's ability triggers, allowing us to draw a card. And we're going to go ahead and put this Noxus Hopeful to the battlefield with Student so that we can defend it from Kaisa accelerating there. And the reason why we put the Noxus Hopeful with the Student is that Stupefy doesn't beat this by itself. It needs to be something else included with it. Smoke Bomb would just beat both of them, but you know, we'll take it where we can get it. So here the opponent uses a Hextech Ray targeting our Noxus Hopeful. We're just getting the damage counters out here. So the opponent is playing a Darius to the board. They wanted to use the Hopeful or the Hextech Ray to get the Legion trigger from the Darius. So here Darius is 7 might. He will be taking out both of our units here and scoring a point. So we're going to go ahead and draw for the Watchful Sentry dying. And we'll go ahead and draw for turn as opponent passes, and we'll score 1 from holding. We are at 4 points to our opponent's 1 point, looking pretty good for us here. But we do have a problem. We have no units. We have no units to speak of here. So we have a few options, right? We could we're gonna actually just go ahead and Void Seeker the Darius and draw a card, and we're gonna go ahead and Stupefy the Darius. So the opponent will try to retreat the Darius, and we have the Stupefy to save it, the second Stupefy to save the to actually go ahead and get rid of that Darius with 4 damage on it. And now we just play a Sentry to base and move Kaisa back to base past the turn. This is a very good turn for us here. So opponent is playing a Falling Star and targeting both stars at Kaisa. So opponent accelerates their own Kaisa from their chosen champion zone. They'll have 3 runes remaining here. So opponent moves their Kaisa to the Reaver's row, scoring a point and drawing a card. This situation is looking fairly good for us since we are quite ahead in points. And opponent plays Lecturing Yordle to base and passes the turn here. So we're gonna be at 9 runes for this turn. We are at 4 points. So we're gonna start the turn by playing a Lecturing Yordle to base and drawing a card here. So we're gonna move our Watchful Sentry to base and getting our 5th point here. We're gonna play. We're just gonna play as many units as we can. We're gonna play a Ravenbloom Student here, and a Watchful Sentry, and we have 2 runes remaining. We are going into 11 runes next turn, so we are fairly close to. We are fairly close to Time Warp here. So at the end of our turn, we're just going to untap 2 runes, or ready 2 runes, because we conquered the Targons and pass it to the opponent. So now opponent plays a Katian Rain, getting all of our units here. This is pretty devastating, but at least we're ahead in points. So opponent scored a point from holding at 3, or from 2 to 3. But we will at least be able to draw from our 2 Watchful Sentries dying. So we're gonna have a lot of cards in hand, but no units in hand is the biggest problem that we're running into here. We're gonna go ahead and Hextech Ray this Lecturing Yordle to make sure the opponent doesn't get to 4 points, which is relevant because that's an even break point. Opponent will play a Lecturing Yordle to base and pass the turn. So we're gonna go ahead and just play a Student for turn, just to try and get a win with Time Warp here. It's a little important how we do this turn. We do have 11 runes, so we can use runes here just to try and clean up the board a little bit, because if we can get to 6 points, Time Warp is really good, obviously. So we do pass the turn here. Opponent gets their 4th and 5th point. So now they are tied on points with us, looking very good for them. But now that they have an Lecturing Yordle on the Targon's peak, we can actually use this assault to go ahead and get some value. The assault's on Cleave, that is. So here, opponent's going to play a Watcher to base to develop a little bit and have a good attackers, I presume, for a following turn. And opponent is also playing a Watchful Sentry and passing the turn back to us. So we're gonna go ahead and play Cleave to the Ravenbloom Student here. And it will be 6 might when it goes and attacks. And we're gonna go ahead and attack Kaisa on Reaver's Row. So the opponent is using Smokescreen on our Ravenbloom Student to put it down to 4 might, or to 2 might, and they have not retreated. They're choosing not to retreat with the Reaver's Row, obviously. So we're gonna go ahead and play our second Cleave here, putting the Ravenbloom Student's might all the way back up to 6. So we'll be stronger than the Kaisa here. There's no card that for one that'll be able to beat that, but the opponent can. So the opponent's gonna go ahead and Hextech Ray here to look for a trade. So now our Ravenbloom Student is 6 might with 3 damage on it. So we're gonna go ahead and Void Seeker the Kaisa here so that we keep our Ravenbloom Student alive, and we're gonna go ahead and get our 6th point here. We do have 7 runes available, so we will not be able to just double Time Warp and win. That was definitely an option if the opponent did not have that Hextech Ray. So we're going to go ahead and play this Ravenbloom Student. So we're going to go ahead and play Falling Star here. Cycling 2 runes as cost. Our targets are going to be Lecturing Yordle and Thousand-Tailed Watcher, and we're going to go ahead and use our smoke screen to get rid of that Watcher, so that it'll actually die from the damage, and we'll pass the turn. So we're in a pretty good spot here. We have 2 students. This is dead to Falling Star, but you know, it's it is what it is. So opponent accelerates a Kaisa from their hand here and draws a card. They'll be at 6 points. Yeah, so if the opponent does nothing here about this Ravenbloom student, we actually just win with Time Warp. So opponent is actually, they only have 5 runes available. They're moving their student or their sentry into the Reaver's Row, and I'm going to choose not to retreat. I want them to use combat tricks on it or something. Opponent is using Shakedown on our student that's on the Reaver's Row, and we're going to go ahead and let them draw 2 here because they seriously just need removal, and 3 runes is probably not enough to have us win, to stop us from winning with Time Warp here. Opponent does find the Hextech Ray, and they have 2 runes available. And they are playing a Ravenbloom student in their base, and this is going to be the game. And opponent passes the turn here. So opponent gets their Targons, but we go ahead and look for a 7th point. Opponent lets us have 7th point, and then we Time Warp for game. Opponent can't do anything there once the point has been scored. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at our sideboard here, what to play in the mirror match. So we want this Sprite Mother for sure. Mundo is good in the mirror match because it's difficult for the opponent to clear that out. It's just such a large amount of might there. And we need to figure out what to take out here. Okay, we're gonna take out 1 smoke screen. We're also gonna go ahead and take out 1 cleave. So -1 smoke screen, -1 cleave, which could, I think we maybe could have made some changes there, but that's fine. We will be going second here, so that's something to keep in mind. So we'll be choosing our going second battlefield here. We'll be choosing Void Gate so that we can get more or we can have our Targons if we lose this game. So battlefields will be Void Gate for us going second, and opponent will be choosing Grove of the God Willow going first. And I can see why they want that going first, because if they ever take that point, they can use their removal to hold on to it indefinitely. And yeah, the going first advantage is real here. So we're going to go ahead and start this game off. Opponent will play a Watchful Sentry to their base. So we have an option of playing our own 2-drop or playing a Void Seeker. We're going to choose to play a 2-drop and pass the turn to the opponent so we don't get behind in development here. So opponent's going to play their Watchful Sentry, scoring their first point, moving it to the Grove of the God Willow, and moving a Kaisa to the base. So here we have a Mega Punish with Falling Star and Stupefy. But actually, we're just going to go ahead and play the Sprite Mother here and move it into the Grove of the God Willow. And move our student into the Void Gate. So why this position is good is because the opponent is incentivized to try and get the Grove of the God Willow back, which we'll have a Stupefy ready for. And even if the opponent goes to the Void Gate, we'll still have Void Seeker for the next turn, but we won't have that this turn. So opponent plays Falling Star and gets rid of Sprite Mother and our Sprite. And then they're going to move Kaisa onto the Grove of the God Willow and score a point there. And draw their card with the Kaisa ability and pass the turn with 4 runes up, which is a pretty good place to be here. So we're gonna score our point from holding with Watchful Sentry here. We're gonna open with a Void Seeker targeting Kaisa. We're hoping that they don't have the retreat here, and they don't. So, and we're gonna go ahead and draw a card from Void Seeker. Now the question is, do we want to move the sentry back? The answer is probably no. We're going to display Watchful, or excuse me, we're going to play Noxus Hopeful to base and pass the turn with 1 rune available. Probably not using Stupefy for anything. We do have a point lead here. We are at 3 points, the opponent's 2 points. But, you know, just a single point lead is not really too meaningful if it's not an even number. So opponent will start their turn by playing Lecturing Yordle. They have 4 runes remaining to work with. They're going to go ahead and Falling Star. They're going to 1 Falling Star on the Watchful Sentry, 1 on the Hopeful. And they're going to go ahead and Stupefy our Noxus Hopeful to draw a card and get rid of it because of the 3 damage marked on it with Falling Star. And they have 1 rune up with Lecturing Yordle. It will be our turn here. We have 8 runes to work with, so we've got a handful of options here. And opponent only has 1 rune available. So this would be a window to play Kaisa onto the Grove of the God Willow because they can't Hextech Ray it on there. Hextech Ray would, their 1 rune up, Hextech Ray would work on the Void Gate, but not on the Grove of the God Willow. So we're going to go ahead and score a 4th point and draw a card. We have 3 runes available to work with here, and we're going to go ahead and play a Lecturing Yordle to base and pass the turn here. Opponent plays a God Seeker or a Void Seeker to their to beat our Kaisa, and they'll score their 3rd point with the Lecturing Yordle, moving over to the Grove of the God Willow. Opponent has 5 runes remaining here. Opponent is playing another Yordle, Lecturing Yordle to base, drawing a card. They have 2 runes up, and they're going to pass the turn back to us. So this turn we've got 9 runes available. We're going to be playing a Sprite Mother and sending the Sprite off to the Lecturing Yordle here. And opponent has 2 runes available. They're going to use one of the runes and the power to get rid of that Sprite Mother. And we have 5 runes remaining here. Yeah, I think it's very important to get to 6 points here. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and play that Darius as our 2nd spell, or 2nd card. And we're gonna run into the Grove of the God Willow here, scoring our 5th point. Opponent will retreat their Lecturing Yordle back to their hand, but we will get the point regardless. So we'll move our Yordle into the Void Gate, and we will now be at 6 points and going into 9 runes. So this puts us in a very dominant position, where next turn we can just use Stupefy and the Watcher, and we'll still have access to Cleave, which is pretty crazy. So opponent plays a Shakedown here. They have 10 runes available. And I'm going to say draw 2 cards here because we're really playing for board at this point. Opponent, as their 2nd card, will play Darius, getting rid of our Darius, going up to 4 points. and they will use their Electrum Yordle to trade with our Electrum Yordle. They have 3 runes available here. So with the last 3 runes, opponent will play the Electrum Yordle that was in their hand and drawing a card, but that's the end of the game here. We're gonna go ahead and cleave, use 1 rune to cleave and the other 8 to play the Watcher and end the game there. Yeah, early point leads are very important to secure on Kai'Sa, and that's, or in a lot of, in every game in general, but the Kai'Sa mirror is really kind of who can get to. It's a somewhat fair game because both parties are using broken cards, broken legend, so you end up having to actually maneuver your way around into 6 points. And here's the game. That's the game. And thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments if you guys have any questions or anything you want to know about the game or Kai'Sa mirrors and other content you want me to make. I'll be glad to make, whatever decks you have. And thanks for watching. See you later.